Good evening, and welcome to WAN Alive, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick. This is your other host,
Christina Fasonic. What's up? I'm in student mode right now. How's everything over there in the Rock?
Well, I'm grateful I can swim because otherwise I'd be drowning in papers.
Yes, I was doggy paddling in a big stack today. In fact, I graded something like 77 papers since early this morning and just quit so that I could come on the show. And I'm really happy to be on the show tonight with our guest, Karen Weyant. Would you like me to tell you a little bit about Karen, even though you know something about her already?
I do know something about Karen, but I think if people are watching at home, I know they may be familiar with Karen as well. But for those folks who are not, let's hear a little bit about her.
Well, Karen J. Weyant's essays and poems have been published in the Briar Cliff Review, Chautauqua, Coal Hill Review, Crab Creek Review, Crab Orchard Review, a lot of crabs in there, Fourth River, Lake Effect, Potomac Review, Rattle, River Styx, Slipstream, and Whiskey Island. The author of 2 poetry chapbooks, her first full-length collection, Avoiding the Rapture, has just been published by Riot in Your Throat Press. She is an associate professor of English at Jamestown Community College in Jamestown, New York. She lives, reads, and writes in Warren, Pennsylvania. So let's bring Karen out.
Hi.
Hello, Karen.
Good evening, Karen.
How are you guys?
Good. And it's always very nice to talk with you, just in general, but about your new work. And we had this out on our WANA table at Lit Youngstown, and you come and hung out with us for a while too and helped us work the table. And tell us a little bit about this new collection and what you're going to read.
Well, I'm going to read a couple of poems from this new collection, and I always tell people that I kind of describe this collection as gritty but surreal at the same time. And that it is a coming of age story of a child or a young woman who grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. But I'm always, I always tell people, I'm always careful to say that, that not all the events happened to me. Okay, there are some liberties taken, even though a lot of the stories are very familiar to people.
So you could say inspired by real events.
Yes, that sounds good. Yes.
All right. Well, we will disappear and let you do your thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my first poem is titled Fish Bones. And as I mentioned before, this particular book is very surreal and gritty at the same time. So I think that this poem really has the best of both worlds here. In late April, the water still cold for wading, I clung to the edge of Bill Gardner's pond, looking for bones of black crappie and bluegill, caught in brown grass or the winter-slivered cattails. I discovered that the local creeks held more promise. With the tip of my shoes, I nudged aside stones and wrestled fish heads and rotting fins from the shallow pools where locals gutted their catch. Once I caught an old fishing hook in the ball of my finger, rinsed my hand in the stream, and watched as the red flowed away in the water. At home, I lined up my collection on the porch banister, sure that every ripple spoke through the bones, that a brook trout would announce the water was cold but clear, that perch would murmur, shallow, like a hushed sigh. Muffled whispers of the water drowned out the way everyone around me laughed. But then, later that summer, when thousands of dead carp floated to the shores of the local reservoir, though bones sharp, eye sockets empty but staring, so much so that local residents swore they dreamed of dead fish in their sleep, I wanted to say, you should have been listening to me. Okay, so my next poem is probably the most realistic per se. And I lost my father a few years ago. He died at the age of 95, so he lived a good life, but he was kind of the gritty, outdoor, solve the problem type of guy. And this particular poem is titled Yellow Jackets. When my father held his Bic lighter to the nests in back of the garage, the gray paper pulp sparked, then blackened. Ashes fell, coating, crawling, ivy and clover. A few yellow jackets fled, one or two swirled, flying in the sweaty face of my father, but most were too stunned, their usual side-to-side swag of a dance flaring in the smoke. When one ant landed on my arm, I stiffened. Its wings settled into a still gauze, body coiled its right yellow bands, the same shade as buttercups we held to our skin, cupping sunlight near our chins. Every step careful, quivering, as if neither of us knew who was supposed to sting. Okay, and another poem takes on, again, many of my poems involve nature. In fact, when I look at my book, I don't think there is one poem that doesn't have some kind of natural element to it. And once again, this particular poem has a surreal tone, but it is a narrative. It's called Mayflies. When the mayflies finally hatched that year, my bedtime ghost stories came alive. Thousands of wings rose in hazy halos above Milestone Road, covering the Little League field, concealing the outfield, pitcher's mound, and home plate. My brother's game was called because no one could make out the pop flies or the foul lines. So we drove home, my father edging the car slowly through thin flutters that turned the late afternoons to a milky dusk. The next day, we woke to reminders that at times we lived among the dead. My mother swept bodies from the front porch and raked our yard free from insect debris. Still, I found wings in cracks of the sidewalk, in the screen door, even in cobwebs strung between porch railings. Okay, and as I mentioned before, most of the poems in this collection are narratives, okay, with a strong persona who is growing up in the country. But sprinkled out throughout the whole book are poems that address a you and in many ways give directions, but also tell a story. The last poem that I'm going to read tonight does that. But it's also very surreal, and it's a little bit more surreal than most of the poems in this particular collection. It's called To the Girl Who Wanted to Be a Roadside Weed. Even at 8, you knew you were going to leave. Thistle-nipped, blackberry bush-scratched, you twitched your skinny, pinched hips and fled town without shoes, souls hardened by bee stings and the toothed leaves of dandelions. With your hair tangled like an old bird's nest, your lips cracked and burned by the sun, you wore cut-off jean shorts and an orange tank top, the same shade as a tiger lily. With every blistered scab, you became the red bloom of Queen Anne's lace. Your budding bruises by your bare ankles turned you into purple asters. When a car pulled over and a family spilled out, you felt for sure that this was your escape. A child picked you as part of a dandelion bouquet, stem bleeding milk as you nestled in her sticky hands. A teenager thought you were a daisy and plucked you apart. He loves me not, smiling at the last petal. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have to admit, I had the strangest experience today. Um, I was looking through Facebook, and for a moment, I'd forgotten the name of your book, and I saw that there was a display at the community college bookstore about avoiding the Rapture. And I was like, gosh, that's pretty. And then I looked more carefully. I said, oh, it's Karen's book, Avoiding the Rapture. They're not actually advising students to how to avoid the Rapture. So you certainly have a title that can pull people in. I like insects. I sort of have an interest in entomology. So I love to hear all the insect imagery in the poetry, with the yellow jackets and the surreality of all the mayflies. It's just wonderful. I love that way that pulled it in. And I was reading somebody's work the other day, and they did some work with plants. So actually, it was I want to say it was Colson Whitehead, and I love the idea that the bruises the color of asters.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of that idea of using something in the natural world and sort of juxtaposing it with a completely with an image or with some sort of meaning that really isn't something one would associate with flowers.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So what I was thinking when I was listening was that, sometimes people say, how is New York part of Appalachia? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking to myself, you being in the southern tier of New York,
Mm-hmm.
this is so Appalachian because I really resonated with the Fishbones piece so much. And thinking about, the connection to nature and the natural world, and how that's such a big theme throughout, not just Northern Appalachian literature, but Appalachian lit.
Mm-hmm.
And then that got me thinking about when I was a kid, we were told to always have a glass of milk when you were eating catfish because of the fish bones. And then that made me think, so your poetry did what I think the best of writing does for us. And that is make us make connections to other things in our lives, just like what Damien was talking about with insects and this, branching out and connecting to seeing how, how words can shape reality and surreality. So I really appreciated that. That was really, it was fun to kind of tag along with your protagonist, who is sometimes like you, but not always exactly.
Yes. I always tell people, and I wish I could remember who said it, but there was a poet who said, I'm not the I in my poems, but I know that person very well. And that's what I tell people.
That's very, very good. I like that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I want to know if you find out, tell me. So you brought your fan club with you, Karen. So here's who we have over in the comments. John Posa says, I love Karen and writing. Our good friend Deb Sarbin says, so happy for Karen to have this platform for her wonderful poetry. Kirk is joining in, and he says, go Karen. And I'm seeing a trend here with maybe some watershed books,
yes.
people.
So far, yes.
Greg Clary, a good friend of ours who's a retired professor from Clarion, says, congratulations, Karen. Mm-hmm. And Jessica Manick, who is a new friend of ours, says, thanks for this conversation. So thank you, Karen, for bringing your people with you to chime in on this great new collection that you have out. Do you have a copy of it with you that you could show us?
Sure. It's right here.
Oh, that's such a great cover. So in addition,
can I give a shout out to Jody Bobart, who is also part of Watershed? She did the cover, and this is her 14-year-old daughter here.
Fantastic. Yes. And I've seen that in person, and for some reason it looks even cooler on camera, which is interesting because it, maybe with the shadows or something. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the bookstore at your school, where else can people find your book?
Actually everywhere. It's on Barnes & Noble, it's on Amazon, it's at Riot in Your Throat Press. And to be honest, if you order it today, it's on sale for $10. Okay.
Because
she's got Yeah,
So that's today only.
well, it's been for 2 weeks, but it ends today.
Ah, okay. So
Okay.
you have exactly what I can't do any math. 3 hours and 42 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to get a $10 copy of that. That is a low price to pay to avoid the Rapture.
Yes.
Exactly. And might they also pick up a copy of this at Watershed Books in
Yes.
Brookville?
Watershed, and it's pretty much all over at this point, which is making I love that I've gained fans. For years I've been a reader, so it's a little bit daunting to have people read my work. It's a little bit scary, but exciting too. So
That's what we want, right? As writers,
Mhm.
please read my book. And one more little comment here. This is from Donna Zarilla, and she just sent you a heart, which is fantastic. And we know Donna very well. She has been a friend of ours for a long time. So thank you, Karen, for joining us. And we hope that the rest of your semester goes well while we're over here in our muck boots trying to get through the end of it ourselves. And thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you and good luck.
All
Yes.
right,
Good
cool.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks a lot. See you next week.